out there that actually run on issues and get them accomplished. We were one of them. We did what we said we were going to do. We ended up getting 98% of our agenda through. You don't get that by constantly disagreeing, and it just shows the lack of experience Mr. Tory has. We ended up passing the 2011 budget by 36-9. We passed the 2012 by 38-5. We passed the 2013 budget to 36-8. We achieved historic labor deals, 40-1. We ended up eliminating the car registration tax, 39-6. We made TTC essential service, 28-17. We ended up bringing all three levels of government that they said it couldn't be done just last year, the federal government, provincial government, and council together to build the Scarborough subway. That vote was 24-20. And I could just keep listing them and listing them and listing them. Mr. Tory, I've talked to so many councillors, and when you come up and say we're all getting along, they actually laugh. They actually laugh, and they say you don't understand how it works. After council, or during lunch, I'll go out with Mary Fragadakis, that is left side of council, John Fillion, far left, Joe Mahavik, far left. We have a great time at lunch. We go back into council, and we debate. We have a healthy debate. But we get along outside of council, actually very well. Matter of fact, John Fillion called me the other day to say, how are you doing? And I made that comment. John really doesn't understand how it really works down there. I can hit the road, I can hit the ground running the day I get there. I know their likes, I know their dislikes. I've been down there 4 years, spending day in and day out with these councillors.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Ms. Chow, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I spent my entire public service career bringing people together to get things done, whether it's to make sure that seniors and kids that have low income have free dental care or not, or children having good food in schools, or 911, if you call, if you can't speak English, it can have 140 languages serving people. All of that is done through working with different members of parliament or city councillors or school trustee. And when I was an MP, I'll give you one example. Jason Kenney at the time was an immigration critic. We worked together to crack down on crooked immigration consultant. And I gave the idea, he drafted the law, and at the press conference he publicly said, Olivia, thank you for your support and thank you for your ideas. So all through my political life, that is how I've worked. I've done it in different levels of government, and I know how to get things done. I have a proven track record of bringing people together. Because when you have an idea, when you bring people together, and then go to the elected representative, no matter what ideology or what part of city they come from, if they are convinced that this is the vision that they too would share, they then will join in because they see the benefits. And more often than not, that is what's happening when I was on city council, for example. And the other thing is that you find out what passion they have, because each member of council have a passion. They want to get something done for their neighborhood or on something, whether it's planting more trees or music industry, they have a passion. Give them that opportunity to have that passion realized, and then we as a city will be so much better off when we work together.
Thank you, Ms. Chow. Mr. Goldkind had signaled first, and then Mr. Tory is next in line.
Okay, great. So a few quick points. When I hear Mr. Ford, and I've now heard this 4 nights in a row, trot out the 90%, 98% thing, I don't know if you can all hear it in the audience. Every time he says folks, I don't know if you understand that he's really saying hoax, because that's what it is up here. So I want to be very clear on this. When you hear those kinds of numbers, they're not facts. He's Fording, and I want to be very clear with all of you. This is a person, and he'll tell you to your face that he went into a room of people, good people at Bloor West the other night, and called people who disagree with him ignorant. I think when people disagree with me, they're not ignorant. They just disagree. Let's have a conversation, and if I earn their trust or their vote on something I'm trying to get, so be it. If I don't, that's the way it goes. So I want to be very clear that as mayor, I actually value, and I'm sure John will back this up, it's very important to surround yourself with people who disagree with you, because it makes you better, it makes you sharper, and it makes you hear all angles. And as mayor, my view, different a little bit than the CEO aspect, is the value that you should all have in a mayor is somebody who makes the right decisions. And I think that's what's been missing for 4 years at City Hall.
Mr. Ford, I imagine you'd want to respond to that.
Well, I would just like to...
Sorry, let's give Mr. Ford a chance to respond to that specific
Yeah, sure, okay.
point, and then I'll go to you, Mr. Tory.
Well, I'm just going to say, go on the city website, take a look at the votes. I'm being honest, I'm not being disingenuous. I'm not making up stories, and that's it. I'm not going to engage Ari tonight.
That's a simple answer, Mr. Tory.
I would just like to say two things. The first, I want to agree with something Olivia said, which is that if we're going to fix the place, and make it work better, it will never be a church picnic, nor should it be, but as I said earlier, it also shouldn't be a circus, then you do have to do what she talked about, which is you do have to involve the city councillors, because they all do have an interest. They all were people who had the necessary chutzpah, to use that word that was used earlier on, to step up and put their name on a ballot and have enough love and interest in the city to run for the city council. And they all do have some talents in some areas. They all come from different backgrounds. But I think you've got to use them, and again, you can't go back to this kind of not left, not right, but let's move the city forward. And I think every one of them has a contribution to make. And Doug, respectfully, you said earlier that I don't understand how the city works, and I think we have a disagreement on it because, you see, you actually think it's working now, and I don't. I just don't think it's working, where you see people putting each other down, and you see what amount to kind of arm camps and people putting on team sweaters when the only team sweater they should have on is the one that says Toronto on the front. That's the one. So I think a breath of fresh air is going to do a lot of good down there in terms of getting things working on the basis that everybody's wearing the Toronto sweater and trying to move the city forward.
Well,
Ms. Chow.
but one of the problems that the city will face is different priorities, funding priorities. If we come in and say that we have to borrow a huge amount of money right off start, and I'm agreeing with Ari on this one, and not say that, how are we going to pay this big debt? Because your scheme, Mr. Tory, is that the funds would come many years later when the development may or may not happen. So a lot of the decision point often when there's disagreement at City Council is really about how the budget gets put together. And you can't go and promise that you will do all these things and yet keep the property tax right at inflation, because right now, the property tax is not even, it's above, this year in 2014, the property tax is above the rate of inflation. So somehow you have to cut something, and when that happens, there's disagreement, which means the city councilors will have to figure out together on what service to cut. Perhaps you can tell the audience here what kind of service you have to cut in order to proceed, so that you would be able to bring people together.
Mr. Tory.
Well, I will simply give some facts to the audience, which are that between the years 2000 and 2013, there took place in this city, thank goodness, $32 billion worth of development, $25 billion residential, $7 billion commercial. That was including 3 or 4 years of very deep recession, as you all know. And so if that pattern of growth and development continued to take place in a city where they tell us there are 85,000 people continuing to come here from elsewhere, and the city's going to grow by hundreds of thousands in population, if that continued over the 30-year period that the Smart Track financing covers, there will be more than enough money from a small share of that to pay for Smart Track. We've got to get it done. It's urgent.
Thank you, Mr. Tory. And with that, we are out of time. That concludes our debate, which actually was relatively civil. I was half joking at the beginning, but thank you, candidates. And we thank the candidates. We thank the sponsors, UJA Federation and CIJA, Tannenbaum Chat, and most importantly, all of you in the audience for taking an interest in this important campaign tonight and coming out.
Do we have a closing statement?
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Yeah.
Is it 2 minutes?
Getting way ahead of myself here. We have 3 minutes of closing statements from each of our candidates. I will keep my best wishes in your mind while we hear our closing statements, which will start with Mr. Goldkind, who has 3 minutes.
Starting with me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we're going to go a little out of order, so let me go first. So, you've heard throughout tonight my vision of a city. You can clearly see how different it is from the other 3 people up here. They have name recognition. There's no doubt about that. You all know that. Many of you are seeing me for the first time tonight. But this city needs the kind of rethink that I'm offering. This city needs the kind of vision that simply lays out the facts. And this ties into the last question a little bit, where how do you get 44 councillors to work together? Offer 44 councillors the truth. Every councillor knows what this city needs, but for certain reasons, they just can't make the call, the tough calls. I'm about making the tough calls. And when you do that together, you are making the city much healthier. And that's what I'm talking about, making the city healthier, unclogging the streets. You know, moving a delivery truck out of the way isn't going to make your drive easier. You all know that. We need tough solutions. The best tool in my toolkit, as I've talked about earlier tonight, is saying to you honestly, for about the price of 2 tanks of gas a year, or less than the price of 1 pumpkin spice latte a week, and I'm being serious, by the way, for less than the price of a spiced pumpkin latte a week, we can build the city we dream of. How do we do that? We take care of the disabled. We support Wheel-Trans. We support the building of transit, because that's how you get other levels of government to come to the table. You address something that you never hear come up enough, and it just skims the surface of these debates, which is the issue of income inequality. It is such a serious issue in our city and in our world. And to think that cities in the United States, understand the importance of taxes spent wisely, spent by people who you can trust to spend them wisely. I dare say that many of you in this room may not trust how some of the people on this stage may spend your money. I only have one goal, which is to get this city moving faster. I also, and some of you may not agree with this, and I'm good with that, I believe government can be a force for good. That is what I believe to my core. And there is a whole segment of society that needs government to assist it. Everybody else on this stage is saying no. Use your ears. No to this, around inflation, add inflation. This should not be the citizen versus the taxpayer. It should not be a citizen versus the taxpayer. Talk to each other about what we need. When you leave this room, talk to each other about which plan makes more sense to you. On October 27th, I'm asking for your vote. You can go to ariformayor.com to read more, because I can't give 30-second sound bites on things that are important. But I will stay tonight after the cameras go off to answer each and every one of your questions, because that's how passionate I am about taking care of this city. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Goldkind. Mr. Ford, you're up next. 3 minutes, closing statements.
Well, friends, on October 27th, you're going to have a pretty clear decision to make. You're either going to vote for LRTs, road congestion, high taxes, extra taxes, gas tax, toll, retail, that my 2 other friends here have said publicly that they're going to do. You can vote for subways, rapid underground transit, someone with experience saving over $1 billion for the taxpayers. Our administration has put $10 billion into infrastructure, plus another $1.2 billion, new money into infrastructure as well. We had 60,000 commercial, industrial building permits compared to the 140,000 building permits compared to the 72,000 last term. Our city is thriving. $29 billion in new development. The gross domestic product under this administration has jumped 12% to $142 billion. We've created 56,000 new jobs. Our exports jumped up to $70 billion. Every record has been hammered. Every record, in a positive way. Tourism is up. When we started, it was 8.66 million visitors. We're up to over 13.5 million visitors. We have more cranes than New York, Chicago, LA, Dallas combined. This just didn't happen. We have labor peace. Folks, you have two choices, three choices actually. We have three. You're gonna vote for moving forward and have a thriving city and someone that has experience, that understands City Hall, that understands council, or you're gonna have someone learning on the job that's never done the job, never been down there. And I asked Mr. Tory tonight, explain one single dollar you have ever saved the taxpayer. And the answer is zero. Zero. Matter of fact, the first time I went down to City Hall, my first vote was to reduce taxes and donate my salary. Last time I checked, I was the only one in the country that's doing that. Mr. Tory's first vote, when he was at MPP, was to give himself a $22,000 pay hike along with all his other politician buddies. That was one of his first votes. So I'm going to leave you with this. Who do you trust with your hard-earned tax dollars? You can answer that question, and it'll be a very simple answer. I can guarantee you, my other two friends here, your taxes are going up. They won't be able to stand up to the unions.
Your time is up, Mr. Ford.
I'd like to ask your vote on October 27th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Ms. Chow, 3 minutes.
When we started this debate, I said that everyone counts and so does every neighborhood, that no one is left behind. The truth is this. Here in this city, almost 1 out of 3 kids live in poverty, which means that some of them tonight will probably go home hungry. We cannot turn our eyes off on that reality. Yes, our cities are doing very well, but there are also people that are desperately in need of shelter and housing. And we as a city cannot leave these people behind or some of the neighborhoods behind. Yes, the crime rate has fallen, but still too many young kids, 15-year-old, are being stabbed or being killed or being shot. So there's so much more we can do. And I tell you, I have a very concrete, realistic plan to create 5,000 jobs for young people, asking companies that do business with the city to hire young people, to sign a community benefits agreement. And we've done this before, and we can do it again. And I'm very glad yesterday that the premier of this province, Premier Wynne, said she supports that concept, and Metrolink is beginning to do that. So we can create thousands of jobs for young people. We can build affordable housing because we haven't built affordable housing for far too many years. We can build 15,000 units of affordable housing so that people don't have to spend so much money on paying rent or paying mortgage. They have no money left for groceries. We can take care of our children a lot better. And I'm the only candidate talking about that. And yes, it is important. We can make sure we have 3,000 more child care spaces, especially for infant and toddlers. Because right now, parents are saying it's taking us too long for us to find quality and affordable and accessible child care. We can make sure that children have better food in school. And my plan, which is very, very practical, would feed at least 36,000 more kids, not just poor kids, all kids that are in the same school. Some that can pay more can pay more. Some that can't afford, the family don't have to pay. And that I talked about earlier, yes, we can have more after-school activities because we know that children that have good after-school programs are much smarter and stronger. Those are the things that we can do as a city. Not only do we need a new mayor, we need a new direction. A direction, a city that care for each other and support each other. And that's what I would do as your new mayor, creating a better city, more caring, a more fair city.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Ms.
much.
Chow. And finally, Mr. Tory, you have 3 minutes for your closing statement.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here, and Chris, thank you for a job well done as moderator. I think that people are going to be looking to find a leader who can be competent, who can be accountable, who can be sensible, who can create a sense of stability at the City Hall after a period of division and chaos that we think we know we can't continue. I think they're going to be looking for a leader who can forge those all-important relationships with the city councillors, with the other governments, with business, with labor, with nonprofit organizations, in fact, with all of you and everybody in every other community in every part of the city. And they're going to be looking for those relationships, those better relationships, to produce results, much better results on traffic. And you can make a difference, and you can start to make it soon. Much better results on transit, and you can make a difference, and you can start to do it soon with something as bold as Smart Track. Much better results on jobs. We've done okay in the city, but there are a lot of people today who don't have jobs, and a lot of people who are coming here seeking opportunity in this city. We want to attract, we need to attract new jobs and investment to this city. And we need to do much better on meaningfully addressing those people I referred to in my opening statement who are isolated in one way or another in this city so that we really can say we have one Toronto. We've got to bring the city together. It's a remarkable place if you think about it. It's not the biggest city in the world, it's not the oldest, it's a very young city. And yet we rank so high on all of the lists of livability and places to do business and so on. We've got to find ways not just to stay in place on those lists, but to continue to rise up right to the very top. Ladies and gentlemen, I am 60 years old. I do not seek this job as a stepping stone to anything else. I have no other agenda. In fact, if I'm working much beyond the end of this decade of my life I'm in now, I'll be living by myself, and I don't want to do that. I view it as public service. Public service, that's what it's all about, serving the public. And I think we can do better. I think we must do better if we're going to be true to the city that we love, if we're going to be true to our Toronto values. We can do better than we're doing today. And that involves bringing people together and creating that sense of one Toronto, all for one and one for all. And I look forward with your help to doing that if you trust me with your vote on the 27th of October. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tory. And now our debate is at an end. So again, thank you to the candidates, thank you to our sponsors here tonight, and thank you to everyone here for coming. On your way out, you'll find a variety of literature from our candidates. Please look it over carefully and make every effort to vote for the candidates of your choice on October 27th. Also, please feel free to take home material from CIJA and UJA in order to become more familiar with the important work that they do. Good evening and drive safely.